On the line with us now, you know him from the Team 990, you know him from RDS, you know him as an ace newsbreaker on the old Twitter. He is Tony Marinaro, and he joins us on Puck Daddy Radio with Wyshynski and Pizzo. How are you, sir?
Doing well, but if he wants to hold on to that girl, he better keep her away from Avery.
Oh, seriously, right?
Yeah.
Well, we're assuming Avery didn't have her first, if you know what I'm saying.
I was going to say, otherwise
don't want to go there.
That would be sloppy thirds, wouldn't
even
it?
Even if it is satellite radio, I'm not going there.
Hey, Tony, when you heard the comments from Dr. Recchi yesterday, what were your thoughts as far as his tact in mentioning that the Canadiens may have embellished Max Pacioretty's injuries for effect?
Objection, Your Honor. Leading question. Ask that one again.
Well, you know what, guys? Look, the Boston radio guys are really good at what they do, and they try and lead you into a corner, and it's up to you to see if you're going to walk into it. And even though Recchi did, I can't condone what he said. I mean, we're talking about a guy, you can talk about a trap all you want, who's got over 20 years experience in the National Hockey League. It's not his first radio interview he's ever done before. And look, some people are going to come to his defense and say, well, he's taking the pressure off of Zdeno Chara, and he's trying to be a good teammate and all that stuff. But at a certain point, I think hockey's one thing, and I think humanity is something else. And the human element really didn't show in what Recchi was saying. I mean, we're really glad to hear that he's okay, but at the same time, I mean, he was at a movie theater and twittering like 4 or 5 days later. Like, don't tell us you're really glad to hear he's okay. Tell us it's bullshit, and you don't think the injury's as bad as it was. And this is why, and he was at the movie theater and he was twittering. I thought he came across really, really uneducated, not classy at all. And basically what he was doing was going up against the integrity of the Canadiens medical team and Dr. Mulder. Look, I spoke with Max Pacioretty's people about 48 hours after the injury, and they told me that the great news was that there was no severe bleeding in the brain, and that up until that point he hadn't had any concussion-like symptoms. But the fact of the matter is, they know he was concussed. He was out for about 5 minutes. Everyone knows he was concussed. To start talking about the severity and whether or not he was on Twitter, I think it's childish, to tell you the truth.
I never buy the whole calculated comment thing. I mean, anybody who listened to that interview knows that it wasn't a case where Recchi even had time to compose himself and say, well, what can I say to take pressure off my team?
It's always an out, right? It's always an out. Every time you say something that is unconventional and has people scratching their heads saying, what did he just say? I can't believe he just said that. You'll have a bunch of people who will tell you, well, that's a calculated comment.
What I thought was interesting, though, is his comments about the injury and about Pacioretty. And again, I don't think that he was saying that Pacioretty embellished. I think he was saying the Habs did. It's a window into the Boston locker room. You know these guys, as soon as they heard that he came back to Bell Center and was meeting with the team all of, I think it was 9 days after the play, you know in the Bruins room they're all calling bullshit on it, right?
Well, look, first off, the medical report that Jacques Martin read about a day or two following the injury, I don't remember when it was, but anyway, it doesn't really matter. It didn't come from the Canadiens marketing department. It didn't come from their ticket sales. It didn't come from any other department but the medical team and Dr. Mulder. That's the first thing. So if Dr. Mulder is going to give a report, I'm going to believe the report to be true. Number two, you probably have the Bruins saying the same thing as Mark Recchi saying, but at the same time, I wonder what the Bruins were saying after the hit. I wonder what they were saying after the game. I wonder what they were saying the day after the game. And not amongst themselves, but also to their friends. You know, Kampfer went to school with Pacioretty. They're very good friends. He's reached out to him already. Mark Recchi has never liked headshots in the National Hockey League. Patrice Bergeron and Mark Savard have suffered from headshots. Andrew Ference took it to Daniel Payet when he delivered a headshot. I am absolutely convinced that headshot was not unanimous in the Bruins locker room, and there are some people that have a really hard time with what Zdeno Chara did. At the same time, look, they're being good teammates. They're going to his defense. But if guys aren't going to come out on record and say on record what they really, really felt about it, and say what they say to their friends, then this is never going to change. This mentality will never change. This culture will never change. And the only way it can change is for the National Hockey League to continue doing what they're doing, to continue in the same vein with the Cook suspension and make it 10, 14, 17 games, forfeit $220,000, whatever it is. That's the only way, because the mentality of the players is not changing. It's going to be up to the National Hockey League disciplinary committee and team to change it.
Tony Marinaro joining us from the Team 990 in Montreal. Tony, there are very few rivalries in sports that are constant, that the hatred for the other team just seems to be there all the time. I find that rivalries have their ups and downs. I mean, there was a while when a Boston-Montreal game really wouldn't cause that much news. Now we've seen two games, one with 182 penalty minutes, 14 goals, and a goalie fight, and the next with, one of the most controversial hits we've seen in a long, long time. As someone who's covered this team for a while, where does this stand as far as the popularity of the Montreal-Boston rivalry?
It's a pretty good rivalry. You take a look at around the National Hockey League. Is there a better rivalry right now than Montreal-Boston? And I'm not so sure it is. And it's funny how things have changed over the last 20 years. The Canadiens had the great goaltending by Patrick Waugh in '86, and he beat the Boston Bruins in the first round, and the Bruins had Ray Bourque, and I think Cam Neely was a rookie, if memory serves me well. And then after that, in the early '90s, the Bruins got really good goaltending from Moog and Lemelin, and Neely was scoring 50 goals. And they beat the Canadiens, and they beat them, I think, 4 to 5 times. And then the Canadiens started to come back in the 2000s. Things have changed so much in the last 20 years. Once upon a time, the Canadiens used to have the enforcer. They used to have Chris Nyland. And the Bruins never got the best of Nyland. And then they finally came back with Jay Miller. And then the Canadiens had to get John Kordic so he can go toe-to-toe with Jay Miller. Now it's quite different. It's still an intense rivalry, but it's different. The Bruins have a big, physical, well-rounded team. The Canadiens have a small, speedy, skilled team. The Canadiens cannot counter Boston's physicality. You have one team playing physical. You have the other team playing hockey. And so it's different, but it's still very, very intense. I don't know if there's a better rivalry in the National Hockey League, guys.
Awesome stuff, Tony. Hey, we got a boogie, but listen, enjoy the game. We'll catch up with you as we get closer to the playoffs.
Keep it up, boys. Cheers.
Thanks a lot, Tony Marinaro from the Team 990 in Montreal.